There are so many different lures from different countries across the world, but in the bass fishing market, whenever a new Japanese lure hits the market, it seems like it's all the rage. We have seen some extremely unique, one-of-a-kind type lures that come from Japan, and in today's video, we're gonna have on one of the best Japanese lure designers and professional anglers on the planet. And we're not just talking about finesse techniques. In this video, we're gonna talk about using giant square bill crankbaits, even bigger swim baits, frogs that have chicken feathers, finesse plastics that you fish with 20-pound fluorocarbon, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. It's gonna be a good one. Welcome back to the Bass Juice podcast here with myself, Tyler Berger, and my best friend, CJ Schaefer. How's it going, CJ?
It's good, man. I'm super excited for this one. When you came with me with the idea of doing a podcast, we're going to get the special guest on. This was one of the guests I said we have to have on. And I think it's his career has been so vast, not just in professional angling, but with lure design, and also his story is phenomenal. So let's dig right in. We've got Kenta Kimura from Japan, Bassmaster Elite Series professional, Bassmaster Opens angler. Let's go.
One of the biggest things that I think that both of us were really intrigued with you as a person is just your whole lure making. You've been an integral part in a lot of major manufacturers' lure designing. And some guys may not know that. Some guys probably do know that. But one thing that I really just wanted to know is, how did you get started? How did the whole lure design process? How did you get started in that?
Basically, I started with just carving wood when I was a kid because, kind of like everybody else, I didn't have the money to buy an expensive fancy bait. So I just started carving wood by myself, and, that's how I really get started. And, that was happened before I started doing the professional fishing. So, that's really, I was not the tournament fisherman like that, like everybody else. I just started with designing bait, and that's how I became famous over in Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that you've been just a huge part of, especially depths. That's one thing that we're going to talk a lot about tonight is, the depths and what you've designed and why you've designed them. But I just think it's so cool. And I know that Depths is a huge brand. It seems to be getting bigger here in the U.S., but I know it's probably, the biggest brand over in Japan. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. And, especially where I'm from Lakeview. That's where I used to guiding, and that's where I grew up. And the Depths is from there. So, we just hooked up naturally. In the first I started to work with them, they only had one, the frog, which they call the basiliski. One's got the a little kicking tail on the back, and that's a really great frog to fishing with. But I also wanted to have some walking frog and a popping frog. And back then we had a hydrilla everywhere in the whole lake, Lake Biwa, and I figured I had a little bit of experience about the frog because I learned some frog fishing here in the United States and a long time ago. So, I kind of figured, I can design my own. And, that's how I started off to deal with depths. And, the Caesar K and the Buster K, which is both of the depths frog, I designed those from the, I think I thought I started with carving wood and making with padding and stuff. It's not the kind of old school way to design it, but we didn't use any computer graphic or stuff like that. We just basically just a carving wood by my hand. That's what a production is. So, when I had a fingernail print or fingerprint, whatever on the bait, everything on the product. So, I had to pay attention on it.
Interesting. So did you? It sounds like you got connected with Depths through designing this frog, and you actually hand carved a frog body, gave it to Depths, and they were able to develop it into a hollow belly. And is that frog? Does it have the feathers coming out, or it's the kick and tail? or both?
It's got the predator tail, the
Okay.
most of them is. And I started the design with the lava tail like everything else, but I couldn't make a cast right. That's why, I tried several different materials and stuff. You know, with action wise, actually the just a regular feather, like a chicken feather, works best. But I couldn't make cast right, and I tried several different material for it. And the one that Labizonku or Labitaire or whatever it is, that was definitely the best material for the vlog. So I figured since I figured that out, I could just change the balance of weight, or even I could could be able to put them in the steel weight to make it a weight moving system. So yeah, it took me a little while to figure them out, but that's that's the still only frog I've installed it anywhere I'm going here in the United States or either in Japan or back in home in Poland and everywhere.
Now, the thing that I think is really intriguing about lure making is that, or designing, is that it seems like, you look at so many of the major brands out there and everything is almost a copy of each other. There might be slight differences in modifications, but when you look at a lot of the lures that you have designed, there are like really big changes in them, which I know come from your brain, which is really interesting. For example, you were just talking about the frog, and I know with most frogs, you will notice that the weight of that frog is really in like the butt of the frog. It's kind of where that hook comes out. And in the frog that you're talking about, the depths frog, that weight is actually kind of more almost on the belly of the frog, which is just super different. So with that being said, what was the thought process behind kind of having that weight that's almost on the belly of the frog?
Okay, wait. The reason why I did it because I was one of the smaller profile, but I also wanted to push as much more water because if you got a tail weight like that, it's like a stand heavy basketball. You can turn easy, but you don't push as much as water compared to flat flow. So I just trying to make it, little more weight in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But problem is you won't be able to make a good cast compared to back weight.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I guess the other big question kind of off of that is why did you want it to push more water? You kept saying that pushing more water, was that like something that you thought the bass would be more attracted to, or?
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of the tail weight frog is designed for snakehead over in Japan. That's all they come from. So
Mm.
like a snakehead has eyeball in the top of their head, but bass is kind of like human, just right in the middle. So they don't have much as sensitivity at the surface compared to other species. So you
I see.
almost have to either rattle or popping sound or slap in the water, something to let them find them, even if they're on a feeding mood. So that's just my opinion.
Sure. I've noticed a lot in looking into kind of the Japanese baits and their design process has a lot to do more with the water displacement, how the bait displaces the water more than the sound. I think vibration's important, but more than anything, it's how does that bait displace water?
Yeah.
And that could be from, just a little 3-inch minnow type bait all the way up to a giant floating worm to a big, this is the Sakamata shad. I think it's the 8-incher. And I feel like it's more, how does it displace the water? And that's so interesting, Kenta, because you were talking about the bass's eyesight and how, maybe they need to be able to feel the bait more than actually see it. And that would probably be through their lateral line, which is the line that runs horizontal from their body. Is that true? Is water displacement more important than anything when it comes to lure design?
Of course, it just really depends on the condition. It has a really clear water and really slow. You still have to go like smaller line. But about the frog fishing, you're around the cover. So, and the another thing is frog is usually, you're casting against the pad or something frogging vegetation material. So, like topwater is still hard to see for bass, but even a frog, they're almost invisible for the bass. That's why, you have to push in water so hard. And a lot of time the lake condition is not that slick either. It has a little bit breeze. It's even less action for fish. So, the pushing water is the whole key for me for frog fishing.
That's super interesting. But it makes sense because if you're pushing water, like you're gonna also have that like bigger wake, like that you can visually see. And like he was saying, like that's what the bass might also pick up on because of their eyesight. They're not always seeing right directly above them. So that is really cool to me. This video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. This is an app that you can download on your phone that helps you to find bass on your local bodies of water a lot quicker. Once you download this app, you can actually select the lake that you are fishing, and then you can input data like water temperature, water clarity, whether you are fishing around vegetation or if you are fishing in a windy or protected area. Once you input all this information, the app will actually spit out lures, techniques, and areas that you can go on your local body of water to catch bass. This app is backed by hundreds of different tournament results from across the nation and can be extremely accurate. So if you guys would like to help support the Bass Fishing HQ channel and allow me to bring more videos like this to you, hit that link down below and download the Deep Dive app today. Now, did you I know that one of the baits that you made over in depths or at least designed was the whole Evoke series of crankbaits. And this one to me, again, was really interesting because in my mind, it's one of those baits like a square bill you think is a square bill, right? Like they're all the same, right? Well, no, they're not all the same. And I actually know kind of the thought process behind the Evoke series, but I would really like you to explain it as to why you kind of designed that square bill the way that you did, because I find this fairly fascinating.
The number one reason I started designing Evoke because I used to be a big fan of the balsa square bill crankbait. That's all I used to use it. But only thing I don't like about is they're only good in one of a four or could be one of a 10. So okay, here's one of my favorite one in my boxes. But can you be able to cast against the butt dock or something nasty spot? If it's only one, you can, and I couldn't. That's why I started thinking I might be able to design one with plastic because you can replace anytime. You can just buy another one, and it's still same action. So what I tried is, everybody used to be just a kind of copy the shape of the wood crankbait and making a plastic mold. But I kind of redesigned and everything because the biggest difference in between the wood material and the injection mold is the plastic has more thicker shell around it, and it's a solid air in the inside, right? With wood material, it's more like the wood material in the middle, which is a little heavier than wood, but they have a thinner shell, which is just a paint. That makes a whole difference in the world on the buoyancy and the weight balance. So, where I started is just to cut every wasteful meat of the outside body of the Evoke. So, like I figured, I didn't need some part. When you cut the head part off, it gives more water straight to the body, and you can also have the buoyancy on closer to the tail side, and also has to have the weight on a little deeper bottom. Trying to make it the buoyancy and the weight as far as I can on the smaller profile body. That's why it looks like almost looks like a bowfish. Like a little short but kind of ugly looking, but. I tried several different ways to make it. Even since I was kids, I had to make a little skinny profile or either, almost flat profile or any different profile. But the Evo profile is one of the profile I was kind of really I could imagine I might be able to make a better crankbait than balsa wood. I mean, I'm not saying that Evoke is better than balsa wood crankbait, but I can say it's a consistent and you
Yeah.
can replace anytime, kind of like your good crankbait. So really, honestly, that's the only square bill I'm sawing and anyone I'm going to world. Kind of like frogs too, because I designed it. I know what the speed is best for do it and what they can do, what they cannot. So I just really don't want to change anything. That's definitely my walking tool.
Right. So the Depths of Voke series of square bill crankbaits have all the characteristics of like your old school balsa bait, but molded into a durable plastic shell. It's interesting that you said you focused on getting the buoyancy in the tail of the bait, which would help it back up out of cover so it doesn't get snagged. But you've got the weight in the front of the bait
Yeah.
for the diving action. That's super cool.
Because like
Yeah.
last tournament I fished at the Elite Series, that was a Sabine. I went up all the way to the town of Beaumont, which honestly the bottom of the river was kind of nasty. Had clothes or somebody's pants everywhere. So lady couldn't fish with just one crankbait all day long. I honestly lost about 10 crankbait each day, but I could still had enough good crankbait to keep fishing. So that makes a lot of difference on the way you fish.
No, that is really interesting to me. And like he said, like when you do listen to like some of the best guys that you would consider like a square bill guy, they do talk a lot about balsa, but they say the exact same thing that Kenta said. They say sometimes you might have to buy 5, 6, 7, 10 different baits in order to get that one bait that swims right. And like Kenta just said, that might be $250 worth of crankbaits to get that one bait. Yep. So if you now put that, same characteristics into a plastic bait that's consistent every single time, you 10 out of 10 are going to be good baits, or they're at least going to be consistent baits. So I really like that you did that with that. Now, one thing that I haven't gotten into too much is fishing a big square bill. Like for instance, Strike King has like an 8.0. I know that the Evoke series, I believe, has a 4.0, which it's a big bodied, really big crankbait. And that's just something, being from Ohio, we have a lot of 2-pound fish. It's just something that I really haven't gotten into, but I would love to hear kind of your take on that square bill. Because I know that at one point in time, you were really catching them on Biwa, really good with that crankbait. But I would just like to know kind of when do you pick up a big crankbait like that? When do you see a condition and you're like, man, this calls for a big square bill crankbait?
Okay, the reason why I designed it in the first, we had a big time was a big magnum square bill back in I would say 2015 or 20 between 2015 and 2017 in Lake Biwa. I mean, I could catch like over 30 almost every day straight, 250 days in a year. And that what I figured is we used to have a bunch of bluegill, and also a lot of the big fish was been eating little tiny bass too. And
Wow.
but everybody else is sort of like a big swim bait or like tiny crash and type of stuffed bait. But to me, the reason why I like the bigger profile square bill because it's a still big bait, but you can also burn that thing. You can reel as fast as you want, and you cannot do that with a big swim bait. Any of the
Mm.
swim bait is only for dead throw or medium retrieve. So, I didn't realize that makes it that much difference between the, retrieving speed. So the big key for the Magnum square bill to me is you can you can burn as fast as you want. So, that's a big key for that way to fish. And you know that I had a really good pattern figured out once in the Grand Lake. The reason why I picked up the big square bill, even 4.0, because in the practice, I caught one about or a pound and a half or a pound of fish. I hook one, and I was trying to shake it off on the side of the boat. And then I saw the 4 pounder was coming up and tried to eat that fish. So I figured that was the same type of situation as Lake Biwa was. So that's how I was leading, and they was 20 plus pound on the pole. Was it just a big crankbait?
So what kind of tackle are you using for the Evoke? What kind of rod, line, reel for the big one? I guess we could go all the way, from the Evoke 2.0 to the 4.0.
To me, the rod is not the really big key on it, but about the gear ratio of reel is a big key, because I gave some of my big square bill to my friend and let him use it. But he told me, how do you even keep reeling with you? He's a bigger guy than I am, but he can keep doing it. And he showed me his reel that was like 7.2 by 1, and I was using 5.8 by 1. That makes a big difference. When you have to reeling that fast, you almost have to have the raw gear ratio reel. And about the Ryan was, you don't have to go any smaller than 20-pound test, because you're burning that bait and you're grinding the rock or either wood or anything, any of the nasty stuff. And I'm pretty sure it don't matter how big line you're using. So I'll be comfortable with 20 or at least 20-pound test.
Yeah, it's coming so fast that the fish can't even see the line, feel the line. It's just a big profile bait, just whoosh.
Yeah.
Fish have to react.
Yeah. No, I know that. That's something I feel like we should pick up, because I know that there's a few lakes even by us where bass will eat like crappie, where they'll eat big crappie. And I, like, in my mind, when you were talking about them eating the little bass, to me, it's just like, well, I bet those big crappie, it's the same thing. I bet if you could get one of those big bass to eat that, if they're eating big crappie, why wouldn't they eat that big 4.0 big crankbait?
And to me, another key is it has to be a pressured up lake. Like the lake is kind of fresh, like some place in the up nose, they are still hitting regular crankbait. You don't have to work that hard to catch them one. But if you go down south, people having big tournament every weekend at the Grand Lake or someplace like that. In Japan, the same way. If them fishes get used to it as any old bait we are sawing. They don't know what kind of crankbait we are sawing or what kind of swing bait we are sawing. So that's another reason that I want to burn it faster, because we don't give it enough time to let them see it. So where I explain to people the difference in between like a little regular profile crankbait and a bigger profile, it's like between the difference in between that, just a $1 bill versus $100 bill. You know what I mean? It's like they know both of them are fake, but if it's a bigger profile, which it's like $100 bill for us, we kind of know the fake, but we want to make sure. That's how it works. We may gonna touch it and pick up and make sure it's not the real. If it's a dollar bill, we don't care. That's the same way for me. So that's why I'm saying that, especially pressured up lake, because they already know what we're doing.
Interesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I wouldn't have thought about it like that, but that makes sense the way that he said it.
Yeah.
Like if a fake $100 bill hit right there, like you'd pick it up and you'd examine it and you'd make sure that it was fake. But if it was a $1 bill, even if it was real $1 bill, you probably wouldn't even. You'd be like, okay, whatever. So he's saying is that because it's a bigger profile, it has a bigger draw, like a $100 bill does to a human.
Yep.
And so therefore the fish, they almost have to just inspect it. They have to take a look. Interesting.
Yeah, try it out. It's like those money grab machines that you go in, and there's hundreds of $1 bills floating around. But if you can key in on that $100 bill, all the other $1 bills just disappear.
Yeah.
And you're just focused on that one, which is the bigger bill, bigger bait.
Yeah.
That's an awesome analogy.
That is. That's super smart.
Yep. Okay, so what Did you design any specific baits for Berkeley, Japan?
Yes, I do. And the one of the bait, I mean, I actually designed it for Buckley, Japan, which they not sell here in the United States, but I designed probably at least 6 or 7 different baits. And one of them, one of a unique shape one was a Jaguar Locket. That's the one I caught them in on Oneida last year. It's like a little bug type of looking bait. It's only like 3.5 inches, but you can go with a bait caster, and it's got a bunch of leg come with it. That's another way. I mean, to me, that's a big trick for the smallmouth fishing, especially the pressure up lake. The Oneida is way pressured up than the other Great Lakes, so that's really the bait. I still think I can win another one.
Okay. I remember you fishing the Jacko Rocket at Oneida, and I told Tyler, like, what Kenna is doing is unbelievable. Just reading the articles about it, you're making a cast that lasts 10 minutes with a weightless, creepy, spider-looking thing on baitcaster, and it just absolutely blew my mind. So is that a technique that you can use across the country, or is it purely like a more of a northern technique, clear water, the fish can see it, they can feel it better, and you just kind of have to sit and wait for them to come eat it?
Okay, I honestly didn't want to talk too much about it because, I mean, I only showed that in Oneida, but actually I caught the biggest one in the Grand Lake 2 years ago in Auburn in day one, which I had almost 22 pounds doing that. And also I caught this lot of smallmouths. I weighed in at the Lake Wheeler in this year at Auburn, which that I was fishing just a community hall where everybody is sort of shaky head at Rock Jetty. I pulled it in after 5 guys and still couldn't catch them on doing that. So and the only good thing is they don't sell here in the United States. So feel
Yeah.
like
Well,
I've still got
we can cut
whole
this out.
box of it, but I kind of started saving though that bait because people kind of ask me to give me some, but I had to keep it until end of this year.
Yeah. So did you also use that bait at the Sabine? Because I thought I saw you on the last day of the Sabine throwing one of those weightless baits of some sort. And I didn't know if it was that exact same one, but I thought you were throwing it in those pilings there.
Yes, it is, and I got one on doing that, but it wasn't really the perfect condition to do it. It was just a one of a try thing, and I saw the one of the fish just right under the surface, and I didn't get, that was a ladies fish, so they wasn't very active at all. And I threw to
Mm-hmm.
my top water. He didn't want to touch it. I saw a jago out there, which I could see on the live scope, but just couldn't. He didn't hit my finesse worm either, so I pick it up in my jago and caught one on the first shot. So that could have happened anywhere I'm going. And that would be my own fish, what that nobody else can catch.
So when it comes to that bait, how do you work that thing? Because it is it's a weightless presentation, so you're casting it out, so is it just a slow drag pretty much across the bottom most of the time, or are you actually hopping it off and letting that thing fall?
For the largemouth or flipping type of situation, I just make it or skip it or make cast and let them hit the bottom once and pop it and let it go down again and pick it up. But about smallmouth fishing, I was drifting with them, so it took me 10 minutes to hit the bottom and took another 10 minutes to get a bite. But if you talk about you can catch a fish in every 20 minutes, it's better than drop shot.
It's such a slow presentation. Like, I don't even know, like it takes serious I don't know, stamina, like endurance just to fish that thing that slow.
Probably mental
Yeah.
endurance.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're fishing this so slow. And I know the Jago rocket that's a Japanese, Japan only bait. We're seeing a lot more of these baits come to market, like the cover scat. I think Yamamoto has one. Are you working these type of like heavy soft plastics kind of the same as the Jago rocket, or is that a completely different type of bait or presentation?
It's a pretty much different, and like a Yamamoto material. Of course, it goes down a little quicker than other because it's heavier, and the cover scat is kind of in between, kind of middle range. It's not the fast as a Yamamoto material, but it's a faster than Jaguar rocket. So it just really depends on really depends on what you're fishing for. But to me, with that kind of presentation, I like to go to slower because it's a faster. You might be able to catch the same fish as a Senko, but with even a slower, some place the fish, you know, never even seen it because nobody can stand it. But the bad part is you gotta know where you gotta make it, where you gotta cast because if you miss cast, you're gonna waste 20 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Some people say I like the cover scan, and some people say I like the Yamamoto. And to me, it's a Jaguar, so that's the only difference in between.
Yeah. Yeah. You might be able to catch the same fish with a Senko, but a different fish might not eat a Senko, but it would eat the cover scat, the Yamatanuki, the Jago rocket.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting. And it's really just a totally different technique.
Yeah. So I know you typically throw that on bait cast equipment. Do you also, what pound test do you throw that on? Do you do straight fluorocarbon?
Yes, I do. And here's a big key. I don't never use a less than 16-pound test fluoro on that thing. A lot of time I would go with 20, no matter how small fish you're fishing for, because that strain, the special fluorocarbon, is extra weight. It's almost like you're doing a fry fishing. You gotta have a
Mm.
little bit more weight than bait itself. So you're making about 100-yard cast. It's about another couple ounces weight. That's how it works, right?
Yeah. That's really interesting too, because it's finesse, but it's like power at the same time. Like it's a finesse technique. It's weightless. It's fished extremely slow, but you're fishing it on heavy gear. I mean, like he said, 16-pound is the least that he'll fish it on. And when we think a lot of times about, for example, smallmouth fishing, we're talking about 8-pound tests being heavy. I mean, using 6-pound, 8-pound, 10-pound. But this, that the line for these weightless baits adds a little bit more action. It adds a little bit more weight, allowing you to make that long cast, allowing it to work a little bit better across the bottom. So that's just that's one of those. That's some juice.
Oh yeah, super juicy.
And that another thing I have to say is if you're fishing a Oneida or some of the Great Lakes, there's a zebra masses all over the bottom.
Oh yeah.
That's another reason I have to go with a bigger line because you're making casts and let them sting for 20 minutes. Your line is completely scratching out the bottom. That's why you don't have to worry about the too big diameter because they can't see it anyway. So you're drop shotting with a braided line, they can see the line, but with that way you fishing, the line is completely on the bottom. Probably between the bait to the another 50 yards, so you gotta have a bigger line for sure.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're talking about all of this, I would say power fishing. We're talking about Magnum square bills. We're talking about 20-pound test with weightless soft plastics. It seems like maybe a misconception that Japan is all about ultra finesse, but here you are, Kenna, talking about a lot of power fishing, big baits, heavy line. How did you or have you broken away from finesse fishing and you're purely utilizing these power fishing techniques?
And over in Japan, especially Lake Biwa, where I grew up, and where used to spend 250 days in a year, that lake is it's a big lake. It's almost the same size as Lake St. Clair. So it's a big lake, but also we have almost 500 people every day on the water. So it's more pressured up than what it is in Gunnersville or some of the places in America. So of course you gotta do something different
Wow.
to fishing. Fishing for big fish, and to me it's a big fish. To catch a big fish, it is a power fish because I grew up with tons of hydrilla and stuff, and really hard to do finesse. But like a person like Taku, he's from different part of the country, and he grew up in a small creeks or pond or small reservoir. And in that type of situation, I mean, he had to grow up with a finesse fishing. So that's what makes a difference even between me and him. Makes a big difference in the way we're fishing. It's almost like a guy from California. Some guys from like Clear Lake area. They're big swim bait fishermen, and some guys from Delta. They're more frog fishermen, and some guy from Elizabeth, like Lake Mead, they're finesse fishermen. It's almost the same area. We are completely different type of fishermen, and different different way to catch a big fish. So to me, the finesse is not the strong point. I mean, I still do a little bit, but to me, I have more, different way to fish on a big swim bait or power side.
Very interesting. Okay, so I think, have we covered
Mm.
kind of all the technique specifics? Let's dig deeper into Japan. It seems like Japan has really adopted bass fishing as a major sport. It gets a lot of media coverage, but I believe bass are considered to be invasive in Japan. How has that transitioned into the big Japanese tournament scene?
For some reason, we are starting to losing number of fish in the especially past 5 6 years, and the thing is kind of getting tougher and tougher every year. But we still have the bigger fish than ever. Like especially in Lake Biwa, like they're not original species from the Lake Biwa, so of course the government don't want it to be there with a bass fisherman. But the good thing is, I mean, I didn't realize in the first few years when they started killing the bass, but I figured what they do when we start since we start losing number, the bigger ones show up because each of the fish can feed enough to grow up, bigger than normal. So right now, I think Lake Buell has the best potential to break another one like than ever been. So that's what the bright side we have. But about the tournament fishing, it's kind of getting smaller and smaller every year. So I think it goes to the more like West Coast type deal. People kind of hunting for bigger fish or either, some little unique way. But, I love the competition fishing. That's one of the reasons I'm here in the United States trying to make a living on doing this.
That's really really
Go ahead
interesting.
and ask it.
Well, I don't know if it's the same question you have, but I'm very curious. Like, do you think that there is another world record swimming in Biwa right now?
I do think so. Or, I haven't seen by my eye because I saw that World Lakewood fish when he caught because he's one of my friends. And I wanted to see that fish. That fish was just as bigger than my body. If I see that fish, I would say that was a 6 footer.
Oh my gosh.
That's how big he looked it was. But I still think that was like 22 pound.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that what it was? Lakewood was?
Hmm.
And one of my customers caught 17 behind me, and 3 years ago,
Oh wow.
just dragging 10 XD. So there is more, you know, more fish than I could imagine. But we still don't know how to catch them up because them fish is a smart. I mean, it's not almost not the same species at all. They can be thinking like a dog. We are playing around with a cat, but dogs don't never care what we are doing. It's a
Yeah.
kind of same type of situation. So they know what we are doing, and they know what time of a day we are coming out trying to catch them up. So we got to trick them somehow.
Yeah, that's wild.
Wild.
But it makes sense though if the largemouth bass population is becoming smaller and smaller in Lake Biwa, the bass that are in there have the capability to grow larger just because of a less demand on the food source. And what other species of fish are in Lake Biwa?
We do have some own catfish species and a lot of our own species over there. But what makes the like beaver fish so big was, in my opinion, that was used to be a bluegill, but now a lot of them, wildlife or the crayfish, are chasing for the either carp or trout. So we have several species of that, and I really think that's why they're growing up so quick and big.
Are the carp and the trout, are those naturally reproducing in the lake? Are there any stocking programs that they're utilizing?
They do the both, especially the carp. They stalking and trying to, that's what commercial fishermen are catching. So I mean, that's a big, huge lake. So they can be producing, but they're also catching for eat. So they reproducing and stuff like that.
That's crazy. The cool thing about that is that, like, if you look at a lot of the Californias, the West Coast, where for a time, like, everyone thought the West Coast was going to be where the next world record was, and that was in particularly like during the 90s, and that was because they started stocking the F1, which is a mix between a northern and a Florida fish. Like in the 70s, I believe. I think it was the 70s and the 80s. And during the 90s was when those fish started to hit the peak of their life, which is why you saw so many of these giant fish in the 90s and in the 2000s. But since then, the F1, when it spawns with another, like say it spawns with a northern strain, it loses some in the genetics. Or if it spawns with a pure Florida strain that's over there, it loses some of that genetics. Or even if it spawns with a known F1, it loses. And they say the pure F1 was why those fish got so big. But you don't hear a lot about, 18, 17, 19 pounders coming out of California like you used to. But it's interesting that you talk about it here. In my mind, it's like, yeah, I bet he's right. You have a lake that's the size of St. Clair that has not a ton of bass in it, and it has plenty of bait. I bet there is a world record, especially if you're catching a 17-pounder there in the recent years.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, add to that, that, like Kenna said, these fish are smarter.
Smart.
Way smarter than what the fish are here. And that's got to be because of angling pressure and probably the dynamic of what Lake Biwa actually is.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. I think something else that's really interesting that I've heard you mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but I kind of want to talk about it too with fishing because it kind of correlates with everything we've talked about, is like you kind of say that, like, you either kind of have to be on one side when it comes to picking out a lure. Like, you almost have to be on one side or the other. Like, you have to be really small, finesse, or you have to be almost like really big. Like when we talked about the big crankbaits and stuff like that. And I actually made a video like last year where I talked about being on the extremes of fishing, because everyone picks up a 3/8 ounce chatterbait or a half ounce jig. That's kind of like what everyone picks up. But sometimes when you're on those extreme ends of the spectrum, really finessey or really big, that's what get those really pressured bites. And so I'm interested to hear kind of what your take is on that.
Yes, that's true. And the reason why I say that because like Biwa, there is like we're usually fishing for at least 6 pounder or bigger fish, and them fish already has been pounded with a regular profile bait and any kind of bait in the market. So we almost have to try something they ever seen or something crazy right now in like B1, it's definitely the finesse situation because we don't have as much as grass like used to. So like you remember one of the dice baits, the all speed dice baits
Yeah.
that Kyoya was throwing at the Seminole.
Hmm.
That's one of the bait that people catch a lot of big one with a live scoping right now. They just drop it right in front of them face and choke it and let them eat it. So I honestly don't ever done it in like viewer because I didn't have to when I was fishing log, but now it's how they catch a big one because of so many guys pounded those fish with a big swim bait, and the about the big fish bait guys, I mean big swim bait guys are even going to bigger profile because like even 250 profile is not the big enough to trick them. Everybody goes like 350 or even bigger. So
Jeez.
that's how they're fishing that against the bigger fish and the pressure up. Like,
What's the smallest fish that you will catch on a like a 250 profile swim bait?
I mean, they're aggressive and, like especially the spawning timing, you can catch like 2 pounder on it. The smallest fish I ever done is 2 pounder. But, every time I come over here in the United States, I'm just trying to understand what the pressure level they have. Like in Lake Fork, they place it up, but not as much compared to Lake Biwa. So I did not, I figure I did not have to go that big or that small. So that with my brain, always kind of think which level of a pressure they
Mm.
got in the big fish side. And to me, in the Lake Fork, probably the swim bait has to be, I would say, 7 inch or bigger to trick them. So to me, it's a 7 inch, or if it's a springtime, it could be smaller.
So you're going traveling to Japan, picking up techniques that they're using. They're using bigger swim baits, bigger swim baits. Have you brought anything from the United States to Japan that just absolutely knock their socks off? The Carolina rig, the Alabama rig.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah. We had the big time air raid moment in the same year as you guys did, but we couldn't get air raid from the United States, so we had to make one by itself. But in the
Yeah.
first year, they dominated anywhere we go, and of course pressured up quick. Actually, quicker than what it was in the United States because we have so much limited fresh water, and every single fish has been caught in the first couple months, so it went out pretty quick. And but we realized how many fish we had left in the country, and since then I kind of started digging for some new stuff. Anything new things coming out, I'm not wasting my time to complain about. Because I know how it works, and in this time I just went back to home for a couple of weeks and spent about a couple $1,000 for just a bait, a Japanese,
Yeah.
pay for the Japanese bait and bring them back because it usually only work for one of a 10. I'm probably wasting about $1,900 was money, but if one thing works out and nobody else is on, that will be a big help for elite level competition because everybody's good fishermen and everybody know what they're doing. And if you're staying with the same bait wise or same weight fish, you know, I realize I can't win any money in doing that. So I really think,
Sure.
I have something of my own, and that that's really helps me out in the last 2 years at least.
Do you think that it takes one tournament to kind of give up a secret technique? Is it one tournament to reveal, okay, this is what's going on, let's
Yeah,
blow it up, and then everyone across the country, it just takes that one moment to
right. I
identify
mean,
that technique or
just
bait.
really depends how good you done it. I mean, you're on the live camera and win the tournament or either close to win, everybody will remember that. But you finish tens or nines, and really not that many people paying attention. Actually, you're not making that much money on that tournament, but you still would have some potential to redo it in the next tournament. And a lot of time, about that bait, how to use it and how to lead it up ahead of everybody else. So, I would say
Yeah.
probably it should have worked for two tournaments. That's it.
I think it took Koya making one cast with the OSP dice rubber to open everyone's in the
Well,
US's eyes of what in the heck is that? And then it was just a
yeah, it
spending
gives us
spree.
so much
Yep.
impact, because that bait is so ridiculous looking. To me, the dice was not the real original one, and I actually have a little bit different version of the same type of the bait, which is called the koike. It's a really original spine bowl type of bait that coming out in the 10 years ago, and I just offered them guys to make a bigger profile, even like almost looks like sea urchin that big around,
Oh yeah.
and
Yes.
people
It's a baseball.
people killing them over in Japan. I mean, it's not even looks like a fish or nothing. It looks like sea urchin, like that big around. We
Yeah.
we caught them good over in home, and I brought it back in here in the United States, and still look for where to throw. I didn't never catch fish yet, but I I'm I'm pretty sure I can catch it somewhere when we go to maybe somewhere in the pressure up lake, or it could be a Gunner's Bill.
That's crazy.
So do you think it's just some of those crazy techniques are just so, and not that they're crazy, but the techniques and the baits, they're so unique, they're so situational to where you have to have the most ideal situation to use those baits and to be successful with those baits. Are what are the most kind of diverse baits that you can use in different conditions, different water qualities, watercolor, that you still consider to be, unique, that are from Japan?
I don't know if you have seen it, that what the Kyoyo was thrown in that tournament at Seminole. I was kind of scared he makes that base too famous over in the United States, or either he's showing it too much about that bait too famous here in the United States is the 4.8-inch Brofred, which a lot of people already know it, but really
Mm.
don't know how to use it. And actually, I caught a lot of the big one on Lake Biwa. I mean, Lake Biwa, and also the Lake you followed this year. And what else? I mean, I've been catching on that bait anymore I'm going, but really kind of has to slow the bait down, slow fall, or either you have to swim in that thing to catch them all. So I was kind of kind of worried about if people get too excited about Bullfrog, but I'm actually happy they're constantly on the dice fade. So
Yeah, and I think the dice rubber is so outrageous and out there, just enough to kind of turn people off of using it. And hopefully, maybe the bull flat I know the 4.8 size is, I mean, that's a big bait. And I think Koya was like flipping boat docks with it, but that might be just that big enough of profile of bait to turn a lot of people off. But it goes along with exactly what you were talking about with the Evoke 4.0, to where in a heavier pressure situation, you either go micro baits or go oversized baits. And from what I'm hearing from Kenta and looking at his tournament success, it seems like going oversized bait is the way to go. To be more of a successful angler.
Yeah, I agree. You know, Kenta, I also have a question. That's it's maybe a little bit. I'm just curious to know you have had a lot of success. You've been on the elites for 2.5 years now, and you've done great. But you fished the opens, and you did really well in the opens, and you continue, like CJ said in the beginning of this, you continue to do really well in the opens. Like you've had some, you know, you won an open here. What was that, last year? You've had second places, several of them, and for guys who haven't fished the open levels tournaments, like one thing that I know when I fished them that I struggled with is like there's people fishing everything. Like it's hard to kind of find some stuff to yourself at times in those tournaments. And so my question to you is like, what is your approach to the open events? When you go to an open and there's 200 to 225 anglers, do you try to find stuff off the beaten path, or do you just try to just fish your strength and go out there and just not even like, you know, take into consideration all the pressure that lake's getting?
Okay, to me, for the open is kind of practice process and halfway. Just to practice for open mind, because when I was just an open fisherman, I could have just long day practicing. I mean, long practicing and find a spot to fish and just trying to figure out about more knowledge about the lake and stuff. But since I made it to elite in fishing, I figured it's not the way to do. Because I'm competing with a more adjustment guy, and the guys usually catching decent on day one and catching even more on day two. And I was not that level in the first year when I was a rookie, so I figured I have to, you know, change completely, change it up completely and restart it the way I'm fishing competition. So to me, about entry fee wise, it's like $4,500 in elite series, and I'm pretty scared to be open mind. You have to have at least something to keep doing it. But in the open, I don't have, I'm not on the point lace at all. I'm just a fishing, trying to make money or even win one. So what I'm doing is I'm never trying to figure out the detail of the lake, or never trying to find out the too deep, just to kind of give it enough idea in practice, just going easy in the practice, and coming tournament day, just go fishing, and that's the way it literally works out in the last 2 years. And that makes me so much idea how to do it in the elite stage. So that's one of the reasons I keep doing it in the open, no matter how.
Yeah, that's super good. And I think that's a reoccurring theme that at least I pick up on from a lot of guys is you don't want to really dial it in practice. You really want to kind of just get a few details and really expand upon it during the tournament. I think for a lot of opens anglers, especially like myself, like all you can think about a lot of times is qualifying for the elites. And so you put so much pressure on yourself that you feel like you have to figure it out. Like you have to like have a solid game plan. And, some of my best tournaments in the opens, I had really rough practices. And the thing about a rough practice where you're not figuring a lot out is you do keep an open mind come tournament time. There's nothing that you're afraid to do because you're like, well, nothing else has worked. But it's so hard, even if you do kind of figure something out in practice, to keep an open mind during those tournaments when there's money on the line, when there's Elite Series berth on the line. So that's just something that I know personally, like I'm really going to try to work on when I go back to the Opens. But I just love hearing your input on that. And what you say makes perfect sense, again, because it's like, you just want to get a little bit of detail here and there. But really, when it comes to the tournament, you kind of really just go with what you're feeling in the moment, which is really, really hard to do. But it's what makes you a good angler.
That's exactly, like I used to be in the calling group back in a long time ago, and when I was drew out was Michael Canary was at the Potomac River. I mean, that was he was fishing completely different back then. I believe that was back in 2005. That was the first one he won on the FIW tour, and I was day 2 core angler. And I mean, I know where he caught him on day 1, but now I understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to get used to with, open mind and change it up during the tournament day, because it used to be back in the long time ago, everybody else was just lock up on something, and Kevin Van Dam was pretty much only one stays open mind and kick everybody's block, So I figured, Ike was changing. In that day, he was changing like his decision about at least 6-7 times. Just changed up and changed up, doing a completely different, and he ended up to win that tournament in the last hour.
Well, that was one of the juiciest podcasts yet, but these techniques won't work well if you don't know where the bass live. And in this podcast right here, we talked to a local biologist all about a bass tracking study that was done on Lake Erie. It was extremely cool, and if you guys enjoyed this video, I think you will enjoy this one as well. Please subscribe, comment below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.